Okay, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to install Exchange Server 2010 on your Server 2008 system. Two of the main requirements for Exchange Server 2010 is that the hardware that you are running must support 64-bit architecture, and also you must install Exchange Server 2010 on Windows Server 2008. So now that we've covered the prerequisites, we now go through the installation of Exchange Server 2010. And two of the main components that you need to install prior to Exchange 2010 is the .NET 3.5 Service Pack 1 framework and also IIS. Now the .NET 3.5 framework, you don't download and install it, but you have to add it as a role in Server Manager. So you go to Rules, and I've already added it here, and then you go to Add Rules, and then you select Application Server. I've already installed Application Server and IIS. What is very important is that for IIS, ensure that you install all components, especially the security section and also the IIS-6 compatibility section. If you don't install the IIS-6 compatibility section, you're going to get errors. As many people have found, you're going to get errors relating to the setup file not being able to read from the IIS metabase. And also the application server will give you support. It will give you support for the .NET 3.5 framework. So now that we've covered those components, we can go ahead and install the Exchange 2010. In addition to these prerequisites, you also need to enable a particular service to change it from disabled to auto start, which is the TCP port sharing service. Now all of these things will be explained to you. If in case you missed it during the Exchange 2010 setup, you will get warnings that particular services are not installed. So in this case, we need to ensure that the .NET TCP port sharing service is set to started and automatic. Alright, so I've already done those things, pre-configured those settings. So now we just need to run the setup, and we go next and accepting the defaults as usual. And we're going to select the typical installation, Exchange Server installation, which installs Hub Transport, Client Access, Mailbox Rules, and the management tools. We're gonna skip the part where we're gonna configure an internet URL for Outlook Web Access. We'll configure that later. And begin installation. Now I've already installed a previous Exchange box that runs 2010 on my test domain. So this is the second Exchange 2010 server that I'm installing. What is interesting is that Exchange 2010 automatically prepares the domain and forest, the Active Directory domain and forest for you during the setup. So the setup is much easier. Some of the other prerequisites that you need to prior to installing Exchange 2010 is that your forest functional level and domain functional level needs to be Windows 2003 native, and also your Exchange Server 2003. If you do have any Exchange 2003 systems, it needs to be in Exchange 2003 native mode as well. So we've met most of the prerequisites, with the exception of a system converter, which we can install later on. And click on install. So what I'm going to show you in a later demo is with the two Exchange server systems that we have set up. I'm going to show you where instances where we don't need the typical high availability using storage area networks. In fact, Exchange 2010 uses what is called a database availability group, which stores copies or passive copies of actual databases rather than having active active passive servers as in Exchange 2003. So I'm going to explain high availability for Exchange Server 2010 in a later tutorial. And the installation has completed. So we see all the rules being installed: hub, client, mailbox, roles, and we can click on finish. So then we open up the Exchange Management Console, and then you have a few remaining tasks that you can continue with: finalize deployment tasks and post installation tasks. So our installation is complete, and you're gonna see, if you're running trial versions, the amount of days remaining. The name of the server I just installed was exchnew, and previously I had installed another Exchange 2010 with the same rules a few days ago. So we are seeing the two machines here, and we can see the various rules that have been used, that have been installed: mailbox, client, hub, transport, and unified messaging. So this is the new console interface, which is significantly different from the Exchange 2003 console system manager. So we're gonna go through some of these items in the future tutorial. For now, if you go to the mailbox rule, you will see the name of stores located in other Exchange database copies that are stored by this server, and this is something that we're going to look at, and this forms part of what we call the database availability group, which is the high availability architecture for Exchange 2010. So if we go to database availability groups, we're going to go through this in another tutorial.